So I wanted to do two things in this video. I wanted to show you some sniper gameplay in Red Orchestra Rising Storm, which is the latest standalone expansion pack for Red Orchestra. It came about a month or so ago, only costs 15 quid on Steam if you want to get it, if you like this gameplay. It is a very hardcore World War II shooter, so one bullet to the chest with pretty much any of the rifles will kill you. If you get shot in one of your limbs, you can pretty much bandage and sort of recuperate a little bit, but it is pretty hardcore in that sense, which is why the gameplay might seem a little bit slow, as if, you know, people are camping around and stuff like that. But as you would probably do in real war, you do have to play extremely cautiously, because you'll just die straight off if you don't. The other main thing, though, that I wanted to tell you about in this video was a really awesome World War II true story that I was reading about yesterday in a book called Higher Call, which I think was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list towards the beginning of this year. So some of you have probably heard this story before. It's also referred to as the Franz Stiegler and Charlie Brown incident. But it's one of the most heroic and best stories I think I've heard from World War II. So I'll tell you about it now. So Charlie Brown was a US bomber pilot stationed in England, freshly trained, flying his very first mission in a B-17 Flying Fortress called Ye Old Pub on the 20th of December 1943, and his mission was to fly over Bremen, which of course is in northwest Germany, and bomb a Focke-Wulf factory, which of course manufactured aeroplanes for the Luftwaffe. Now Charlie and his 9-man crew, flying in formation on this mission, managed to get pretty much over Germany without incident, because of course B-17 is one of the highest flying planes, or bombers, in World War II, so they could fly above the German flag that was coming from German-occupied Europe. However, to bomb the aircraft factory, they had to sort of dive down because they were too high to accurately see what they were going to be hitting. And it was at that point that Ye Old Pub got hit with some really accurate flak, and it took out 2 of the 4 engines, so the plane was now only flying at 40% of its speed. And it also took out the plexiglass nose on the bomber, through which like a gale force wind was now blowing, because of course when you're flying that high, the temperature with like wind chill factor is like minus 30 degrees centigrade, so the crew were now having to put up with that in this what was a severely damaged bomber. Fortunately, Charlie managed to steer the plane out of the flak without suffering any more damage, because it wasn't flak like nowadays flak, where you've got 30mm cannons on battleships that fire like 10,000 rounds per minute. I suppose they're for taking out jets and stuff. This was kind of like timed explosives that would explode at a certain altitude, so by diving, Charlie managed to get away from the flak. But unfortunately, because 2 of the engines were out, the Ye Old Pub couldn't keep up with the other bombers they were flying with, so they kind of got cut off as a straggler. Now, as bad as this situation was, unfortunately, Charlie flew into more problems, because the Luftwaffe, having seen the damage to the factory, obviously scrambled some of their pilots to intercept the bombers, and 10 fighter pilots started attacking Ye Old Pub, who was already in a state where it could barely get back to England, and they destroyed 1 more of the engines. The entire plane, including half the tail, was riddled with bullets, and I think half the tail was actually missing. The tail gunner got killed, and I think every single one of the crew got injured with bullets or shrapnel, and it was amazing that nobody else actually died. Charlie got hit in the shoulder with a piece of shrapnel, and because combination of that shock and the lack of oxygen, because the bullets from the fighter pilots took out the oxygen system in the plane, he passed out. Amazingly, it was probably Charlie getting knocked out that saved the bomber, because it went into a steep dive as he was the only pilot, and the Luftwaffe thought it was going to crash over Germany, so they didn't shoot it to bits anymore. Charlie woke up with the plane flying 1,000 feet above the ground, leveled out. It had miraculously leveled itself out, despite the fact there was nobody actually flying it. So Charlie, having survived this with 9 of his crew still alive, was desperate to get back to England. Now it was at this point that Charlie ended up flying over Franz Stiegler, who was a German ace, 22 victories to his name, and he only needed 1 more victory, an aircraft shot down, in order to get the Knight's Cross, which was the highest order for bravery then for soldiers in Germany. Franz took off, caught up with Ye Old Pub, and it was when he got closer that he actually saw how crippled the plane actually was. He said afterwards that it amazed him that the plane was actually still in the air, and of course because the guns had been destroyed, Ye Old Pub couldn't shoot back. It was essentially a sitting duck, and it would have been the easiest thing for Franz to have actually shot it down, but he didn't. He flew next to it, and he could see through the massive tears in the fuselage where the gunfire from the previous fighters had ripped holes in it, the 9 crew huddled there in the freezing cold wind trying to tend each other's wounds and fix the fires and stuff that were starting all over the plane. Now it so happened that Franz was part of a squadron led by Gustav Rodel, and the members of that squadron believed that everything is honor, and Rodel was very famously trained his cadets with the following 2 sentences. He said, "You are fighter pilots, first, last and always. If I ever hear of any of you shooting at someone in a parachute, I'll shoot you myself." So Franz was not, to Franz, the old pub was just like shooting at a guy in a parachute. There was no honor in shooting down a plane that crippled, even though he'd get the Knight's Cross for actually doing so. And Franz didn't just stop there, he actually went further in saving Charlie Brown and his crew. First, he tried to redirect Charlie to land safely in Switzerland, which of course was a lot closer than England, because he thought the bomber would never make it that far, but Charlie just kept pressing on because he couldn't understand what this strange Me-109 pilot that was flying on his wing was doing there and why he wasn't shooting at him. The other reason, though, why Franz wanted Charlie to divert to Switzerland was because he knew that the German artillery on the coast of France bordering the English Channel would easily, at 1,000 feet, take out the old pub. Because Charlie kept pressing on, Franz realised the only way he could save the pilot and his crew was to fly on their wingtip until they were over the German flag, and he gambled that the German flag wouldn't shoot down one of their own planes in order to hit a British target. The gamble, amazingly, actually worked, and the old pub made it back only 250 feet above the ground into Norfolk. The incredible thing is, this story wasn't told until nearly 40 years later, because Charlie was sworn to secrecy by the British authorities upon debriefing, because they didn't want other English pilots thinking that German fighter pilots were friendly. And Franz couldn't tell anybody, because if he had, he could have been executed for not shooting down the enemy. It was in 1986 that Charlie happened to mention the story at a pilot's reunion, and about 6 months later Franz happened to read it in a newspaper, and he contacted Charlie, and for the next 20 years, and he died quite recently, they became the best of friends. And it just amazed me that despite all the problems politicians cause, these 2 people managed to get something good out of it. But anyway, I don't know if you found this true story interesting. You'll have to tell me in the comments. But thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this bit of gameplay here. I'll be posting some DayZ when DayZ 1.0 is out and when DayZ Aftermath is out. So as soon as they're out, I'll be posting up some DayZ, which will be for the standalone. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next chapter.